What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co host, Eric Wilson. And today we want to go over the lines that the New York Rangers are currently playing with since trading for Patrick Kane. It's been a little bit tough lately. The Rangers lost 5-3 to Ottawa, lost 4-2 to Boston. Now they have a little bit of a break here, and we're wondering if maybe the Rangers should try to switch up their lines, practice with something different over this break, and maybe in the next game go ahead and try out something different because recently those lines haven't been working out those last two games. Ever since trading for Patrick Kane, the synergy of the team has seemed just a little bit off. Patrick Kane also has 0 points. Panarin only 1 point and 1 assist. Had a pretty bad game during that 2-game losing streak. So we want to discuss the lines, why it might make sense for the Rangers to try something different and dive into all that good stuff. But before we do all of that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode and subscribe to Fireside Rangers if you're new. But without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the Rangers lines?
I'm doing good. It's a little disappointing we don't got any Rangers hockey for a couple days, but at the end of the day, it might be what's needed at this point of the season after two pretty bad losses, where offense wasn't really showing up. Defense definitely didn't show up. The Rangers do kind of need to figure something out, and it's a little weird, just like looking at these lines because we've put together like this really good team, but then as soon as it's all formed, Miller gets suspended, and then Lindgren's injured, and now Mott's injured. So a large portion of the problems that we're seeing is definitely due to the fact that we have been playing shorthanded for 2 games with only 11 forwards, 5 defensemen, and especially those defensemen not being the best, with Nico Mikkola and Ben Harper getting an abundance of ice time. That's never going to be good. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like a little frustrating, and we got to figure out what we're going to do in order to just get back on track.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing here is that the Rangers, like I said, over the next few days while they're practicing, should probably just try something different and see if there's anything that might work better. Now, Eric, if you want to break down the current lines for us real quick.
Yeah, so the first line, which we've been rocking with for pretty couple weeks now, Kreider's advantage at Tarasenko. Then second line, obviously Panera and Trocheck Kane. Then we got the kid line. That's the third line, Lafreniere, Hedel, and Kako. And then normally the fourth line would be VC, Goudreau, Mott. Obviously, Mott is out with an injury right now. So it's sort of just been 11 forwards with VC and Goudreau. Now with the 11 forwards, you're going to have guys like shifting down to that fourth line playing as well. So there's not really set 4 lines we've seen the last 2 games, but just normal hockey standpoint, those are the 4 lines. And it gets like a little confusing when you talk about what you want to move around, because obviously the most disappointing line, unfortunately, has been Panarin, Trocheck, and Kane. But the first line with Kreider's advantage at Tarasenko has been like pretty good. I'm pretty sure all 3 of them have scored goals in the last 2 games since the Patrick Kane trade happened. And then you just look at the last game, our 4-2 loss against Boston. The 2 goals that we scored came from Lafreniere. I know that Kako had an assist as well. So it's really just that one line that's kind of disappointing. So when it comes to fixing that second line issue, we are going to have to sacrifice one of those lines right there.
Yeah, and I think that's super interesting to take a look at that second line with Panarin, Trocheck, and Kane. If you're looking at it right now, Panarin 1 assist, 1 point since the Kane trade. Trocheck same stat line, 1 assist, 1 point, and then Kane with 0 total points. These guys, for whatever reason, have yet to click, and it's kind of weird because we know that Panarin and Kane, they had chemistry back in the day, and so we all assumed that they would be reunited and instantly just click again, and it would be great magical times for the New York Rangers in the Garden. However, it hasn't necessarily been that way. So, Eric, what do you think the problem is on that second line? Panarin, Trocheck, Kane, all struggling and not really putting up the points that we expected them to. And I think the chemistry between Panarin and Kane that we were expecting to see is not at all what we've gotten. So, what do you think the issue is on that line?
Well, I mean, I think that's exactly the issue right there, is that we all just assumed they were going to click right away, and I'm sure they did too. You look at last game against Boston, it was arguably one of Panarin's worst games that I've ever seen as a Ranger, because he had so many turnovers in the offensive zone where he could have made a much smarter play, but rather than just doing like what he normally does and being an elite player in the league, Artemi Panarin keeps trying to force feed Patrick Kane to just like immediately rebuild that chemistry that we saw like 6-7 years ago now at this point. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this, is that it needs to come naturally, right? They've been playing apart for a long time. If they're going to find their chemistry again, it's going to happen naturally on their own throughout time. Kane has only played 2 games with the Rangers. He's not going to immediately hop on the team and just start scoring goals and putting up assists like a madman. And Panarin is going to have to like rework with this line. He hasn't played with Kane in years, and Trocheck has never played with Kane right there. So the fact that they just keep trying to force feed Kane is creating problems. Other teams know that. We see it. They see it. If Panarin has the puck, pretty much just cover Kane and you're good. And that's like, it's a big thing right there.
Yeah, I think particularly in that game versus Ottawa, when I was watching that one, I saw a lot of opportunities where Panarin might have had to shoot the puck, or even Kane. I thought Kane had a few opportunities on the wing where he totally could have put up a shot, but instead just tries to pass it across the ice to Panarin, and Panarin does the same thing to Kane. It's like they're looking for that one extra flashy, beautiful pass to create a highlight reel, the classic Panarin Kane highlight reel. They're trying to make that happen, but they're forcing it just a little bit too much. It's not coming naturally, as you just said, Eric. And I think that, once, in my opinion, once Kane gets that goal, once he puts the puck in the back of the net, that's when everything changes. It looks like they're just pressing to try and get him to score. But once he finally scores, it'll happen naturally. It'll probably be some breakaway. Kane gets it, and we know how great he is on the breakaway. Once he gets that goal, I think that's when they'll start to ease in and be more comfortable and be like, okay, we don't have to force the puck to Kane every single chance that we get. But right now, unfortunately, the addition of Patrick Kane, which we thought would propel us to being those Stanley Cup contenders, is kind of holding the Rangers back right now. And again, I don't think that will continue. I just think that it's something that the Rangers need to adjust. They need to get used to having a superstar like Kane on that second line alongside Panarin and Trocheck. So I think that if it were up to me personally, I don't think that the Rangers should change their lines. I think they need to stick with what they've got. These lines still look beautiful and perfect to me. I mean, yes, there's an argument to make that switching it up would force them to adapt and get over the whole, or like dazzling of Patrick Kane, the excitement of him being there, and like the tunnel vision that they're getting with him on the team. So I agree with that argument, but I almost feel like that can be solved through practice. Again, they have that 4-day break that we're currently on. If they just practice different lines, that's fine. But I don't necessarily think that they need to change the lines come game time. So with Patrick Kane right now on the second line, I like it. I like these lines and I want to stick with them. But I'm curious to know, Eric, what is your final verdict on that? Do you want the Rangers to change their lines in an upcoming game?
I'm like 50-50 on it because I think long term, I want to see the line stay the same. Panarin, Trocheck, Kane, that line has so much potential to be one of the most dangerous lines in the league right there. And you also don't really want to break up Kreider, Zibanejad, Tarasenko, or the kid line. And obviously, anyone in that top nine, you're not going to see them playing on the fourth line right there. So it's kind of like it would be cool to experiment with it because I feel like Kreider, Zibanejad, Kane would also be like a pretty insane line, and then have Tarasenko down with Panarin and Trocheck. But we're just going through a rough patch right now. We're down 2 guys. The defense is really to blame for most of our losses right here. Patrick Kane, he'll fit in eventually. It took Tarasenko a little bit of time as well. That's why I was happy we made that trade as early as we did, because even though Tarasenko scored in his first game with us, after that, it was kind of just like a dry spell for a couple games. But now Tarasenko's been scoring like an elite goal scorer again for the Rangers. So it's good to see that working. I think it's going to be the same thing with Kane. He hasn't put up a point yet, but the points will come. He's on a new team in a new city. He needs to get situated on this line. Just Panarin, just if you watch this channel, just stop forcing it. Just give it time. It'll work out. Like you mentioned, we have like a 4-day break. Our next game is going to be against Montreal, who is like bottom of the league right now. So it should be a nice game if everyone just tries their hardest and just like doesn't play down to them, just stays at the elite level that we know we can play at. I think that we should be good.
I agree with you, but one question that I do want to pose for you, Eric, is when you're looking at these offensive lines, knowing that the defense is a little shorthanded right now with guys like Miller and lingering out, do you think that maybe on that second line, Panarin, Trocheck, Kane, there's just no defense? Like, it's just not enough. And, like when we're talking about that fourth line with VC, Gaudreau, Mott, we really like Mott because he provides quite a lot defensively for a forward, right? But when you're looking at that second line, Panera Kane, Kane, do you think maybe that line does need to get switched up because there's not enough defense in it?
I don't know if the defense is the problem. I mean, like, it is a problem. Kane, Panarin, they're not known for their defensive abilities. They're more just take the puck up the ice and score. Trocheck is pretty good 2 ways. He knows what it takes to go back and play defense. Yeah, Trocheck is a pretty good 2-way player. He knows how to take the puck back down the ice and then just run down and play defense. But we'll never really know what it's going to look like until we have the full defensive core back. Lindgren's out, Miller's out. We will see Miller back in the next game against Montreal. Lindgren, who knows, still day to day. It's a little questionable there on Gerard Gallant right there for not being as transparent as we would want. But once the full defensive core is back together, I think we can give a final verdict on, is that line going to be a defensive liability? Because as of right now, yeah, but you can't really blame them because we don't know for sure what this team is going to look like as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid argument. And I think that's probably the right perspective because, the Rangers are shorthanded defensively. I think right now, so here's what I think. If Lindgren remains out for an extended period of time, Keandre Miller should be back in the next game, or does he have one more left on the suspension?
Yeah, Keandre Miller will be back against Montreal in our next game.
So then that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. But say Keandre Miller were to remain out and then Lindgren also out, then I would probably say you might have to switch the lines just to make them a little bit more balanced. But right now, knowing that Keandre Miller is coming back in, hopefully Lindgren recovers from the injury rather quickly and is back in the lineup, I don't think that there is a need to change the lines and place an emphasis on having two-way players out there necessarily, because once we have our top defensemen in, guys like Keandre Miller back in the lineup, I think that will hopefully fix a lot of the issues that the Rangers are facing. Because yes, defense has been the problem. They've been putting way too much pressure on their goalies, Halak and Shesterkin. So I think that maybe getting two-way players isn't necessarily the objective that they need to be focusing on. I truly just think that once Panera and Kane get clicking again, it's just going to take them a little time, get that chemistry and stop forcing things. But really, once we roll around to the postseason, I feel pretty confident that the two of them are going to be right together, perfect chemistry, and everything is going to be good once again in Madison Square Garden. But taking a look at the standings, the Rangers, they only have a 7-point lead on the Islanders. However, the Rangers do have 2 games in hand. But Eric, talking about how this team hit a little bit of a slump with this 2-game losing streak, how important is it that they get out of that right away to make sure that the Islanders don't start nipping on their heels?
Oh, I mean, it's extremely important. The Islanders have been winning left and right. They made some pretty big trade deadline acquisitions as well. And then you just look at the Rangers' upcoming schedule. Obviously, we've mentioned it a couple times. We play against Montreal on Thursday, and then on Saturday we play against Buffalo, who's also clawing their way in for a playoff spot right there. So that'll be an important game. But then after that is where things get like super important to close out the season. We've got a game against Pittsburgh, then Washington, then Pittsburgh, Carolina, Columbus, New Jersey. So it's like a lot of divisional matchups coming out to close out the season. So if the Rangers don't get out of this and we drop like a large majority of those games to our divisional rivals, we could see some weird stuff happening. The Rangers might like fall down to a wild card spot, maybe even like a second wild card spot right there. So it's extremely important that these 4 days that we have off before Thursday when we play, we get Miller back in. We need Lindgren to heal. We need to figure out the lines, hopefully during practice, Kane and Panera will work something out and they'll start to click a little more. They haven't really had too much time to get back into form with each other. Kane came to the team just immediately game and then game. So I don't know. This break is extremely important. And even more important is the pretty much last couple weeks of the season. We're like early March. The season usually ends early April. We got about a month left, about 20-ish games, maybe a little less than that. So got to start winning, got to get back in the shape for playoffs, basically.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, it's super important that the Rangers start to tighten up here as we are in crunch time. And as you mentioned, the schedule does get pretty brutal towards the end of the regular season for the New York Rangers. So in this little bit of a slump here, but you mentioned that next game upcoming, they've got a favorable matchup. And I think that could be the one that rights the ship for the Rangers, getting Keandre Miller back and hopefully having these days to practice. I mean, even Patrick Kane said that himself following the first game against Ottawa that he played with the Rangers. He mentioned specifically having that 4-game break and how that would be really essential for him gaining his comfortability and getting that chemistry back with the Rangers players and particularly with Artemi Panarin. So I think it'll be super important that the Rangers are diligent during this little break, practice well, and hopefully come out there and get a win in their next game. But it's going to be really interesting to see how everyone gels together during this final stretch of the postseason. And of course, we'll be giving you updates on everything New York Rangers right here on Fireside Rangers. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode and comment your thoughts on the topic down below, and subscribe to the channel if you're new and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. We'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.